What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me is my great co-host, Ralph Hanna. And here we are yet again, another episode of Guarani Vision, right in the middle of July. Obviously, we're going straight into, obviously, a big week, or a big rest of the month, that you would say, for Paraguayan football as a whole. Obviously, we'll be talking about what happened in the Copa Sudamericana as Libertad and Cerro Porteño got their knockout round playoffs ties underway. Obviously, there are still some teams in actually the Copa Sudamericana, Sportivo Emiliano, but they don't play till August, so it's going to be interesting to see who they might face from this kind of knockout round playoff. And yeah, I mean, also it's a big month for Paraguayan sport in general. The Olympics begin next Friday at the time of recording, around this time. Obviously, many of our athletes are already in France at the minute, and they'll be participating in various sports. But of course, here we're focused on the men's football side. We're obviously going to be focused on what's going to be happening there in France with a really ambitious Paraguay team, you would say, Ralph. I mean, obviously, there's been a lot of changes to the squad, and we'll talk about that later on. But I think there is this sort of like positive energy, you would say, from kind of the negative perspective that has been given to the club game and to the national game, at least from the Copa America. I think this U23 side by Carlos Jara Salier is giving a little bit of hope, I would say, because there is that real chance that they can go in and do something well. But yeah, Ralph, I'll speak to you first. And how are you feeling in what is obviously a very special? I know you're a big fan of the Olympics, so it's a special thing. And for Paraguay to participate in the football, which obviously is a important discipline in the Olympic Games, I think it's certainly a lot of attention will definitely be given on this Paraguay national team as they go into hopefully a tournament that they can have high hopes of doing well.
Yeah, it'll be their third Olympic Games in terms of the men's football team, and they've always got through the group stage. So that will be the kind of task again, or the initial task, and it's positive. I mean, champions of South America already makes you, I think, one of the favorites. So that they're in and around there. I think you were telling me they're fifth favorites
Yeah, I
to.
was looking at some bookies like favorites of the gold medal. I think they're around like the fifth, sixth favorite above teams like, sorry, below teams like France, the United States, Argentina, etc.
Yeah, so they're already around there, and then obviously we'll have to see how the draw works out. But I think we what we haven't seen yet from this team is we haven't really seen what the final team will be altogether, because obviously now they've added some of the over 23 players, but also Julio Enciso, who wasn't there in the qualifying. So it's going to be really interesting to try and find what is that final team, because Diego Gomez, for example, the star of the under 23s when they won the South American Championship, he hasn't actually played any of the warm-up friendlies because he's been with Inter Miami. They've only just let him go to France. So he's only just turned up. So that's one thing that is a bit interesting as we go into it, right? Like, oh, we haven't actually seen this team that will be the Olympic team play a full 90 minutes together. But I think one of the best things with Carlos Harasaguer, what he did really well is he manages the group very well in terms of the human side of it and the emotional side of it. He was very good at that. So I don't think that will be much of an issue. But at the same time, we're still not really sure what this team is, because if you just looked at Paraguay on form, people might be a bit concerned because they've only won one game since winning the title in those friendlies. They beat Dominican Republic in the first of two friendlies, and since then they'd lost every game until yesterday when they drew 2-2 with Ukraine, which was a crazy game, by the way. I mean, Paraguay missed two penalties and they had to score two goals at the 86th and 89th minute to equalize. But that also, I think, speaks a bit to the character of this team, right? And the kind of spirit. And like you were saying, everybody's a bit negative about the national team or sometimes the club game, because you don't see some of that passion and some of that spirit that this team has shown. So I think that's why everybody's so excited about what's coming up starting next week.
Yeah, it's gonna go right by fast, and we'll obviously mention it just shortly. But before we do, let's talk about what we saw this week. We saw obviously our two Paraguayan teams participate in the Copa Sudamericana. We'll start with the one that happened on Wednesday with Libertad taking on Universidad Católica of uh, Ecuador. And obviously, this was a result that Libertad needed to go into with, a positive sense of going into now the return leg, playing in Quito, playing in the altitude at the Olímpico Atahualpa. And they did that. They achieved their kind of goal, you would say, no pun intended, but they scored twice to a goal from Oscar Cardoso, becoming the oldest goal scorer. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ralph, the oldest Paraguayan goal scorer in the South American competition.
Yeah, the oldest Paraguayan and South American competition, and the oldest goal scorer in the history of Copa Sudamericana in the knockout stages. And so he beat Jose Sand with his goal there. And it was interesting, right? Because we talked about, I think, in the last show about will Ariel Galeano continue with that team that we saw in the Libertadores, and he hasn't, right? He switched up because Oscar Cardoso, for example, hardly started in the Libertadores games. He gets to start here. Lorenzo Melgarejo, who Fede mentioned on the show, is back from injury. He provides the assist. And I think that really was like looking at a much, it's strange to say, but a much higher quality team than they played in the Libertadores, which maybe shows the mistake they made with some of that squad rotation there. But it was a really strong performance, and once again, I mean, Lucas Sanabria's goal is really good, and he's one of those players that he's kind of was stuck with his long contract with Libertad because he's now 24 and he hasn't played as much first team football with them because he'd been on loan a lot and that kind of thing. But he's a very good quality player, and once again, another really good game from Ruben Lescano, he's starting to become. People keep thinking who's going to be the next Libertad player to make a jump straight to Europe or maybe to the MLS, and Lescano seems to be filling that kind of role because he keeps putting in really good performances.
Yeah, 20 years old actually as well. So obviously right in that kind of field of young stars. But it's a good result, I think, nevertheless. I think a 2-0 lead is obviously a lead that for them is respectable. I mean, obviously it's never over till it's over. But I think for Libertad's case, because they also start the league this season, I don't think they can also feel as if though, I mean, look, if they lose one game of the clausura, it's not going to be the end of the world. So I think their attention now, as much as they want to go and do well in the league, I think they understand the Sudamericana is also there, and I think getting the result is good. So I have good. I mean, again, it's gonna be we're gonna have to see what Universidad Católica do in altitude, but I would feel very confident in what Libertad can do and qualify to the next stage, which would technically be the round of 16. And if they win that game, then they get the chance to taking on Sportivo Armeniano. So you could see an all Paraguayan affair in the next round.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, I think you're right. They did the right thing with the 2 goal margin, but also by not conceding because it's going to leave Universidad Católica with some question marks going into their home leg of how are they going to try and break down Libertad. And so I think it's much tougher at altitude, but I think they seem to have done enough or given themselves that buffer zone to hopefully be able to go through to the next round, and then anything can happen. And I agree with you because they've already won the Apertura, they're already qualified for the Copa Libertadores 2025. So you often see the team that wins the Apertura isn't necessarily taking the Clausura as seriously while they're still in another competition because they know they've done kind of the key part, which is making sure they qualify for Copa Libertadores the following year. So definitely, I think we'll see this team repeated next week, and in the Clausura probably a rotated team.
I think really this result kind of confirms, if they do obviously qualify from the tie, I think it kind of confirms themselves that they can actually go and win this because, again, we'll have to wait and see what happens against Emiliano, but you would put them as favorites in this one, even though Emiliano has always shocked some teams as we've been speaking over the years. But I think you look at the quality of a team that knows how to win. You have quality of players that understand the responsibility of winning these important games, especially when they're taking on teams like Emiliano and their quality in the league, um, you know, you're already in. If they do get that, they get the quarterfinals, and yeah, I think after that, anything's possible for them. And I think that's the one thing that they want to do. It's like that one little push, and you feel as if though with this kind of tie, and I have to look at who would they have to face if they beat Emiliano. It's still up in the air, but a favorable tie can put them in a good situation. I mean, again, but that's the whole thing with them these days. Like with Libertad, they always find a way to, and they've been far in major competitions beforehand. They've been to quarterfinals, semifinals, never a final. But maybe you feel as if though now, especially with the way that they're playing, that it could be this year. I don't know. Maybe I'm just thinking out loud, but it's just you look at the way the tie has been favored them. It's like, yeah, they're not even going to face a Brazilian team yet or an Argentinian team.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I was looking recently. They got to the semifinals in 2021, and of course they lost to Bragantino in that tie, and it was very close. And then they got knocked out. Actually, last year I think they got knocked out just by that last minute equalizer when they had. I think they Yeah, I think the last minute equalizer put them out or something.
Yeah,
It
I
was
think it
one
was
of those.
level. It was going to level the game and go to extra time, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, that's right. Sorry, yeah, they were going to go to extra time, and Garnero had his way of wanting to always attack, and then so they concede late on, and that's always been the big thing previously, right? With Daniel Garnero was even though they were doing so well at domestic level, he wasn't able to get them to the international title. Now it's funny with Ariel Galeano, who's not an experienced manager at all. He's in his first big job. Maybe he might be the one to kind of crack the code that Libertad have been trying to work out for so long. Because, like you say, they always have one of the strongest teams, probably on the continent. Because I mean, these players are really well played, really well paid. Sorry, and it's often players that could really still be playing somewhere like somewhere in Europe. You know, in the case of Melgarejo or Tito Villalba, but they're here in Paraguay. So they have such a strong squad, but they often struggle to for whatever reason to make that final jump. So maybe Galliano's the man to crack the code finally.
Fingers crossed. You never know what could happen. I think one team that definitely needs to obviously improve their performance and not even think about qualifying to the next stage is Cerro Porteño because obviously they took on Atletico Paranaense at home and this was a crazy game, Ralph. This was a really crazy game when you look at it. I'm just gonna give you uh just from the start. Firstly, you got the goal from Miguel Benitez, a really nice goal actually in the 33rd minute. That actually gave Cerro Porteño the lead. But then you saw Jean Fernandez get injured, which means that Alexis Arias had to come in. Obviously, someone that's I don't recall him playing a single game in the Clausura, or yeah, I think this is his first ever game for Cerro Porteño as a whole. He came in as a substitute goalkeeper. Here he is making his debut. It's typical with the Cerro team, is it? They like to make debuts. I think was it Miguel Martinez that made his debut in international competition as well when Jean was injured. So you had that. Diego Churin gets a penalty right at the end of halftime, and the result would have been a 2-0 if he had scored. He did not. So that meant that going into the second half, Christian Cardoso got the equalizer for Atletico Paranaense. And it was looking to be more of a difficult scenario where Fernandinho missed his penalty as well in the 79th minute. So you had everything, Ralph. You had everything in this game, but ultimately it's still not the result that Overton wanted. And I think they really blew the lead in this case. Wanting to go into now was going to be a difficult task of going to Brazil, going to Curitiba to get a result. But yeah, I mean, this was a crazy game. It's a real
Yeah,
crazy.
it was action packed, like you said. I mean, missed penalties on both sides. Goalkeeper gets injured. There was a bit of everything. Yeah, I agree that it feels like Cerro let the game slip because they were much better in the first half. They had a very good first half. They were set up well. They really. I mean, I really can't remember too many chances from Paranaense, at least in open play. There was definitely some kind of they were getting some long shots off, or there was some set pieces. Remember, actually, Cerro came close in the first half as well with the Turbe. I think he hits the post with that free kick. So Cerro were playing really well, and that penalty at the end was a bit of a gift in that I think it was everybody was just waiting for half time and maybe Paranaense switched off. But Turin, if he scores that and makes it 2-0 at halftime, that really should have been game over. Of course, he doesn't. And then for me, the key moment in the game is 58 minutes. Canovio comes in, so the very young Uruguayan coach is only 32 for Atletico Paranaense. So we're just talking about Galliano, who's young, and now we have here in Paranaense. He brings on Canovio, and Canovio, what he does is he starts running with the ball and he starts breaking the lines that way. And Cerro suddenly couldn't really handle that. I don't think they ever found a way, even with the changes they made, to stop that happening. And of course, he's very important in the build-up. for the goal, and then I think it's his kind of shot cross that gets turned in. He wins the penalty as well after Fernandinho had won the ball back and gave it to him. So I mean, he was such a key player that, and Cerro didn't really have an answer for that. I guess the big question is, with it being 1-1, does Atlético Paranaense start with that similar system in the second half that saw them do much better, but could in theory leave them more open to counterattack? Or are we going to see something similar where it's very kind of patient in the start, and then maybe they'll try and bring on Canovio and play a bit more attacking towards the end and try and push Cerro over with like a single goal? It's going to be a really interesting second tie. I mean, I guess the big thing for Cerro is hopefully in terms of injuries. We talked about the goalkeeper, but hopefully there's a way Cecilio Dominguez can be back. I didn't think Iturbe, apart from we just mentioned he hit the post, I didn't think he had a great game. We also saw once again Gabriel Aguayo not starting but coming on, and I think once again he kind of proved that he's one of the more exciting players going forward. So does Gabriel Aguayo start in Brazil? It would be a huge game for him. He's very young, but he does seem to be the kind of real difference maker for Cerro when Cecilio Dominguez isn't there. So there's a couple of questions going into that second leg, and it's not going to be easy.
No, it's definitely not going to be easy. And as well, we have to see what the severity of the injury of Jean is as well. I mean, you're putting in now a young goalkeeper like Arias, who did well on the save, by the way. He did really well on the save. You have to give credit to that, I think. To do that on your first game, I think is credit to what he was able to do. But yeah, even you're going to put him on in the second leg, Ralph. I mean, when you have to be kind of the player to look out, not look out for, but you have to be kind of the standout player because you're the one trying to not hope that Fernandez score. That's the only way that, in a sense, Cedro can really go and get a result there. The goalkeeper has to step up. That's the only way.
Yeah, but that's I guess this is their moments where they're put to the test, because it's the same with Libertad, of course. Rodrigo Mourinho he's continued in goal. Martin Silva's back from injury, but he was on the bench in that game for Libertad Universidad Católica, and it's a similar thing, right? He had barely played any first team football, and it was thrust into it through injury, and then managed to play well enough that he actually got to start in the Copa America. So I guess this is the life of the second goalkeeper. You just have to take the chance when it comes, because it can be very rare. And I don't know. I think I'm sure he will be tested. But I think the way Cerro started the game, I feel they can definitely go almost toe to toe with Paranaense. I didn't feel at any point they were being overrun in terms of the pace of the game, which sometimes has happened when they take on Brazilian teams. I felt they were more comfortable there. So we could see. I don't know if we're going to see a game in Curitiba where they're just like totally overrun the whole game and on the back foot. I think we still could see something quite balanced.
To say that against the Brazilian side is actually very comforting, you would say. I think certainly we have to see what happens with Cedro on this one. And with Libertad too. Again, even though they have two different ties, their ties are not over yet. They're still in the contention, but Cedro have a bigger ask in this case, whereas Libertad, they're gonna have to try to hold that lead moving forward. So yeah, that's going to be interesting to see what happens in the Sudamericana. Obviously, keep an eye on the Clausura that begins this weekend as well for those that are listening. So keep an eye on that. But now let's switch to the nitty gritty, the most important thing of the show today. It is the Olympics. The Olympics begin in Paris exactly next week. But Paraguay kick off their campaign in France, in Bordeaux specifically. They take on Japan. I just want to look at the roster real quick, Ralph, before for everyone that's listening, because obviously this isn't a big team in regards to numbers. It's obviously because it's the Olympics, you only have 18 players on the side as well. So looking forward to the team. We'll start off with the goalkeeper. You only have two in this one. You have Gatito Fernandez and Rodrigo Frutos. Obviously, Gatito came in to replace the injured Angel Gonzalez, who actually got injured in the first friendly against France, where they took the lead early on, but then they lost obviously 4-1. But we'll go position by position, but I mean, it's obviously a very good improvement, you would say, on the sense of getting someone with experience, but it's really unfortunate that you can't get someone like Angel Gonzalez, who was so crucial to Paraguay's campaign for qualifying for the Olympics.
Yeah, it's a real shame for him that he picked up that injury trying to save a penalty, Mateta's penalty for in the friendly against France, and he was a very important figure. He's a kid that he spent time in Porto before he went back to Libertad, so he has some real top level experience, at least in terms of behind the scenes, not obviously senior football. But in Gatito Fernandez, I mean, you have a great goalkeeper who arguably could have been picked for the Copa America squad. It's just that he's also suffered so much with injury in recent years, and he hasn't always had such a good run of games as maybe he would have liked. But I think there, I mean, it's pretty solid for Paraguay to pick a goalkeeper as one of your over 23 players. It was a wise choice, I think.
Looking at the defense, and the only other overage player, the one that replaced Gustavo Caballero, was Fabian Balbuena. He leads the line for the Paraguay team. It looks like he's going to be the captain. We have to see if it's going to be either him or Diego Gomez, who we just mentioned. But rounding off the defenders, it's Alan Nunez, Ronaldo de Jesus, Daniel Rivas, Guillermo Flores, Alexis Cantero, and Fernando Roman. All the players who were vital to that campaign in in Venezuela. So, you're keeping the base of players and you're getting someone like Fabian who, as we both saw in the Copa America, was kind of, if you have to choose one of the better players, you're going to have to choose someone like Balbuena. He was the captain during that side. And I think, getting someone like him is also very important because of the experience and because of the way of performing in big tournaments like this. So again, if you really want to be super, super critical, I think the two choices that Paraguay made for the overage goalkeeper, the older age players like Gatito Fernandez and Balbuena, I think were the right ones, at least the ones that were up for disposal, you would say.
Yeah, exactly. Again, it's like a sensible choice, and it's a big choice. You get the captain of the Copa America squad to come in. So I mean, it's great experience and leadership, and so that's what with these younger teams they could be missing. It's going to be tough on Ronald de Jesus, who I thought actually was so good in the qualifying because it seems that Balbona will take his place as Gilberto Flores is left-footed, so it will make more sense to have that right foot, left foot centre back partnership. So it's kind of a shame that he will have to miss out, but obviously the quality of Balbuena who's played in the Premier League. I mean, he plays in Russia at the moment. That's very key. And then it's really interesting that Paraguay actually have three left backs, right? If you look at it, so you have Cantero, Rivas, and then Roman can all play as left back. I think it seems that Harasaguero's always gone with Rivas as his main choice. Personally, I like Canteros as the most exciting player, but I think Rivas is a bit more solid, probably a better crosser of the ball, whereas Canteros is maybe better in terms of just forward projection and running with the ball. So that will be interesting to see. And then you have someone like Alan Nunez on the right, who's a very talented player, also at Cerro Porteño. There's a lot of Cerro in that back line.
They're kind of missing that right now, I guess, what we saw. They could have been a big difference for the game against Paranaense. I think that was always the thing. Looking at the midfield, obviously we have Diego Gomez, kind of the main star of this team in regards to performance from the Pro Olímpico. He's the last player to play to come to the side because he didn't play any of the friendlies of obviously, like you said, playing with near Miami. No Fabrizio Peralta. No Fabrizio Peralta. He couldn't get the permission. Due to a weird case, Ralph, if you want to explain. It's kind of a weird situation that he went to the Copa America, and he obviously had the experience there, but couldn't get it for the Olympics for one little situation.
Yeah, well, Fabrizio Peralta goes because he's just moved to Cruzeiro, and I think the statement they put out was that they didn't think he was fully fit or something, but of course it was more they just didn't want to give him the permission because of course the Brasileirão just has continued the whole time and they keep playing. So they were arguing that maybe I think some of the paperwork didn't arrive on time, or when they finally did, it was too late and that kind of thing. But you got the feeling that maybe because he just signed for the Brazilian side, they wanted to kind of keep hold of him and get him through their kind of version of preseason because he's just been there. But yeah, it was also strange that he went to Copa America, didn't actually play, and then so in theory he hasn't like he's not tired from game load, let's say. He's just traveled a lot because he's followed the Paraguay all around the US. But yeah, that was a shame to miss him because I think Diego Gomez is so important. But if you think of the more or there's not really a natural replacement for Diego Gomez because he does so many different things on the pitch. But maybe Peralta would have been your best backup should something happen to Gomez.
Rounding off all the midfielders, you obviously have Will Herrera, Marcos Gomez, Enzo Gonzalez, and Marco Fernandez rounding off this kind of interesting midfield, you would say. I think it's a more case of reliance on wingers, and we'll get to the forwards in a second. But obviously, I think you have that balance of being able to have someone like Diego Gomez, who I think is as crucial as Peralta is, honestly. And I think, getting him out would have been a bigger miss than Fabrizio Peralta if I had to be devil's advocate. But for Diego Gomez, this is a big tournament for him. I think he's the one that's kind of demonstrated, and especially coming back from injury, he scored a really nice goal in Inter Miami's last game. He actually mentioned that his agent is actually in talks with Brighton and Hove Albion. So I think obviously a lot of attention will probably be given on him. And, obviously there's still other star players on this team, but it's gonna be a big tournament for him. He missed out on the Copa America, so this is the tournament where he has to be kind of the star and ultimately be this is his audition to be Paraguay's starting midfielder for the next decade or so.
Yeah, and he's such an important player because of everything he does, right? So he can win the ball high up, he can win the ball further back, he can cover a lot of ground, either running with the ball, without the ball, he can score from distance. The kind of closest was a word kind of the closest comparison I want to give to him in terms of that all action player is a bit like Bellingham, right? Jude Bellingham, because he has all of those kind of capabilities to do different things. The thing about Diego Gomez that he mentioned in that interview is, yes, he talked about Brighton, which we all picked up on, but he did say my ankle still hurts a bit, and so that's quite worrying. That was his first. I think that was his first like full game back since he'd been injured because he'd been as a sub before then, and saying that my ankle still hurts doesn't kind of bode well going into what's going to be 3 games in quick succession with the group matches, but let's hope he can stay fit because, like I'm saying, he's such a unique player, and he will really be. I think he was really what was missing for Paraguay in the Copa America. That sometimes you didn't see that connection between midfield and attack. And so what happened in the Copa America? Julio and Cesar came really deep to pick up the ball because there wasn't anybody else. With Diego Gomez, you don't need that, so he's going to be key. And then just looking at that team, it is very interesting. Marco Gomez is the only player who's really like a holding midfielder, like what I would call a defensive midfielder. Wilder Vieira, for example, likes to press higher up. Enzo Gonzalez is more an attacking midfielder, but he's actually been used to recover the ball a lot. We saw that in the game against France in the first friendly. So we'll have to see like how exactly they get all the balance right with that midfield.
And rounding off the forwards, you actually mentioned Julio Enciso. He is the star player on this team. He's the big name, obviously, played the Copa America. He scored one of the only 3 goals at Paraguay's Copa America campaign. And it's crazy how this happened, Ralph. Like, let's be real. Like, this is obviously a player that is Brighton's number 10, obviously is going to be with a new manager very soon. But from the declarations that he gave at the airport, that the APF really tried his best to get him, and they did. They succeeded. I think it's one of the rare wins that the Paraguayan FA has done for an FA that's been through so much, obviously, with the way that's been going on. Like, I wouldn't say chaos, but definitely turmoil in the sense of just some issues bureaucratically trying to get players. They got probably the best one out there.
Yeah, it was a big surprise because we just assumed that Premier League teams wouldn't want to give up players, although they have for other teams. But we just thought at this stage, if they hadn't announced it now, then what would be the reasoning to do it? Especially because he played the Copa America and he played a lot of minutes in the Copa America. So it was a big surprise. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know exactly how this was brokered and how this was done, but it's good news for Paraguay that you get basically I think your best player from the senior team, the most exciting one. And it'll be really nice to see him play with Diego Gomez again. They played briefly in Libertad. Their crossover time isn't huge, but they know each other well. And so I think having those two together could form a very good partnership. And it kind of was something Paraguay was missing, because if you look at the other strikers, well, maybe Marcelo Fernandez is a bit more mobile, but then Hook and Marcelo Perez, they're not like similar player types. And then you have someone like Diego Gonzalez, who hasn't played much. He's been in Lazio's Primavera team. He's very exciting, but we just need to keep an eye on him, because he got injured in the first half an hour of that last friendly against Ukraine. There's no report on how he is doing at the moment, but he could be another player that's also suffering with injury. And like you said, it's such a small squad, just 18 players. That can be so huge if there is anybody missing through that. But I think, yeah, everything's going to revolve around Julio Enciso, because he makes it revolve around him, whether that's the tactic or not. He's such a good player, such an important player, that he will do that, and kind of the ball is like a magnet to him, or he'll go and find it, and we'll see him, I'm sure, like as a key player in this tournament.
So looking at how this team sets up, obviously, there's gonna be 11 players and seven missing out onto the starting lineup. But how do you see the setting up? Because obviously it's a lot of talent, a lot of players that are familiar with what they were able to do at the Sudamericano in Venezuela Paralímpico. So how do you feel as if you feel be the best setup for this Paraguay team moving forward?
Well, he'll definitely go with a back four, because that's what he always does. So I guess you'll have Fernandez in goal, and then probably Nunez, Balbuena, Flores, and Rivas, because that's who he's played most. Then in midfield, you have to have Diego Gonzalez. He's been playing with Enzo as Diego Gonzalez, sorry, Diego Gomez. He's been playing with Enzo as well. So I think those two will be there. You're going to have Marcos Gomez to try and hold, I think. So you have those three. And then up front, I'm guessing he will go with Enciso, Marcelo Fernandez, and maybe Marcelo Perez. Maybe those three he'll end up, and not Hook.
Interesting, yeah, because that was the one name I'm thinking. Like I'm thinking Parsa Hook actually to start.
He so he might end up wanting Hook, as similar to how Paraguay played in the Copa America, that you have your big nine. I'm just wondering if he's gonna play Julio Enciso down the middle. There's not as much worry, I think, of having somebody that can do like defensive work on the flanks and that kind of thing. I don't know. Maybe he'll throw him in the middle, but yeah, that would be the other way. Is Pasahuka is more of your nine, and then Enciso and Diego Gonzalez if he was fit, but more likely, I guess, Marcelo Fernandez kind of running off on the wings.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And obviously, I think, like you had mentioned with Carlos Jara Salier, I think his understanding of managing, I wouldn't say egos, but definitely having the human side of things would probably be a big factor, really. Because this is, again, it's a manager that's also been here before. The last time they've been to an Olympics was with him. They finished with the silver medal, the famous silver medal, the only Olympic medal in Paraguay sporting history. So I'm sure for him, we'll speak on a personal standpoint, they want to go for he wants to go for the gold medal. I think he genuinely thinks that obviously the opposition will be very strong. Argentina are coming in strong. France as the host. You have Spain, who have a few champions from the Euros. Obviously, there's other outsiders as well in there, but I think there is this real ambition from Paraguay to actually go and strive for a medal. At least that's the ambition that I would assume from this team, honestly.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of belief because they won the South American Championships, and so you're not qualifying through second, you're qualifying because you were champion. You were better than Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, Colombia. So that already puts them, I think, in their feeling as one of the top teams. We said earlier, fifth favorites. That seems around the correct thing. But obviously, fifth favorites, if you don't play any of the top four favorites in the quarterfinal, then you find your way into the semis. And the way it works out, of course, if you get into the semifinal, then you have two shots at the medal. Because if you lose, you get obviously the bronze medal game instead. So yeah, I feel there will be a lot of belief in this team to go through the group. Japan's going to be a really good test in that
Yeah, I
first.
was about to say, let's definitely go into the group because obviously they play Japan, Mali, and Israel. I think when you look at it from a perspective of the other groups, it's definitely the most accessible one you can get for Paraguay. I think obviously I look at Argentina's group, for example, they have Morocco, Iraq, and Ukraine. And I think it's around the similar stand. But again, I think Argentina have the better team, I would say, than Paraguay at the minute, even though Paraguay were the champions of South America. But I think the best test and the biggest test, of course, will be the first game. And I think that's always the most important thing. I think what we saw in the Copa America, I think with Colombia, that was always going to be the big test of how like is going to be decided for the group as a whole. So it's the first game against Japan, and Japan come with a team that is obviously also experienced. A lot of players playing in Europe, Ralph. They have a lot of them that are playing in countries like Germany, Belgium, and the Netherlands. So yeah, and they obviously won the U23 Asian Cup over there as well. So they're also coming in with a bit of a chip on their shoulder. But I think it's that first game against Japan in Bordeaux that I think is going to be vital for qualification because not even that, it's who you play afterwards. Because you look at the other group in Group C, they have to play either, Spain, Uzbekistan, Egypt, and Dominican Republic. You would assume that Spain is the favorite for that one, and I think that's the game that Paraguay, if they were to qualify, they don't want to play. I think
Mhm.
that's the game that they want to avoid, really.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, this Japan team is really good. They've already just drawn with France. They beat the US in the friendlies, kind of moving up to here. They actually beat Argentina 5-2 last year as well in a friendly. So they're they're very interesting, especially going forward. Like you mentioned, there's a lot of players that are already playing in Europe. Interestingly, the defensive side is it's all local players that have been called up, and so that's where maybe Paraguay think they can get something from the game. The fact that probably with you look at Julian Cesar and Diego Gomez going at a defense that is based in Japan and all very young players, they'll feel they can get the better of them. So and we saw this in the qualifying tournament that sometimes Haras Ayer would do that. It was just a transition game and to back and forth and kind of a battle of nerves almost of like we're gonna give up chances, but we're going to make some for ourselves, and we feel like we're able to dig in and find the goals when it matters, especially through Diego Gomez, who has that kind of winning mentality. So I think that would be a big test, but I wouldn't be surprised if you see like a I don't know a 2-1, 3-2, 4-3 kind of match.
You're not going to say for who, though. You're keeping yourself on the
No,
fence.
no, it could go either way. Yeah, exactly.
The second game is against Israel, obviously playing at the Parc des Princes. And, I think this is also a very tricky team when you look at it. Obviously, they have the likes of Daniel Peretz, who's the goalkeeper at Bayern Munich, Lil Abada, who actually is doing very well at Charles FC, kind of from Celtic. So, again, another tricky team for a side that, had only, this is their first ever time playing in the football tournament. At the Olympics. So there's obviously this kind of inexperience as well. But they made merit of being the only few teams from UEFA to qualify. It's them, France, Spain, and Ukraine. So clearly they have some merit to do it over some other big teams that are not there.
Yeah, right. There definitely must be some quality in the group to be able to get through that. But when you look through the team, it's is pretty much a local side, and apart from a couple of the names you mentioned, and the other overage player Gandelman, who's coming in from Ghent. So I don't know. I think Paraguay should feel that they have a bit more quality there for that match. But I wonder how much the Japan game's gonna decide how they enter into the Israel game, right? Because if they come off a defeat, maybe then they're starting to look to do something a bit different or change or questioning themselves. If they come off a win, then they'll feel, I think, full of confidence, and it would be a second win, honestly, if they're in that kind of momentum from the first game.
Yeah, and obviously getting the two wins would qualify you directly. So even then, that would kind of give a little bit of pressure, lower pressure, you would say, before the final game against Mali. A Mali side that also actually has a lot of experience playing abroad. You're gonna see two Wolverhampton Wanderers players play against each other. Boubacar Traore taking on Enzo Gonzalez. So that's gonna be an interesting matchup. But yeah, this is again a really, I think when you assess it from a big standpoint, I think a lot of these teams obviously are going to be competitive. And I think for Paraguay's case, it kind of feels as if though this group is going to be very open, but the bookies say Paraguay are amongst the favorites to get out of the group, possibly to win it. I think I just saw something the other day saying that Paraguay are the favorite to win the group. So I don't know. Does that add a bit of pressure? I don't know if this goes into these guys' heads as champions of South America. I don't know. I just because it's been a while since Paraguay are labeled a favorite for something. Not, I wouldn't say like a tournament or anything, but even just get out of their group. I can get to them. I can really get to
Yeah,
them.
it has been traditionally that sometimes when you have to have more of the ball or when you have to be the protagonist, that Paraguay have often struggled, at least in national team level. But I don't know. I think this is a very confident group of players, and they've won things together. I mean, not just the South American Championships. They won the South American games when they were hosted in Asuncion. There are a few of those guys won a gold medal, including Diego Gomez. So I mean, I don't think they'll be too phased by that. You look at Julio Enciso. I don't think he's ever lacking confidence. So that probably won't be an issue for him either going into this as favorites. And with the Mali game, it's a team that interestingly beat Japan in a friendly. So they actually faced each other, which was quite funny. Um, it could be a tough game, man. Honestly, it could be a tough game looking at some of the names. They're probably, I think they have the most names playing in Europe, actually, even more than Japan, because you look at there's a lot of players based in France and the UK as well, because you have Huddersfield and Wolves players. So yeah, that could be quite a tough matchup, especially as it comes in the third game, right? When you're likely to be quite tired because it's 3 games in what, 7 days? Yeah, 3 games in 7 days, and this is the third one. So I mean, it certainly won't be easy. I would probably say Japan's going to be the biggest test. Then Mali and Israel should be the game they definitely target to win.
12 players of the 18 play in Europe. I just did the count right now. Some of them playing in Mali, some in Morocco, UAE, and even the United States. There's a player from the Penn State Litany Lions, by the way. So there's a college player. That's the beauty of it's an amateur tournament. Don't you remember? That's always the spirit of
Yeah.
the Olympics. So there you go. You get an amateur player. But ultimately, I think Paraguay's case is they understand this responsibility. So I think looking at this, we'll get some predictions for now. Um, I think the first game again, I'll go first. I think the first game against Japan is going to be the toughest of the three. I think when you look at it from a collective point of view and also an organizational point of view, I think this is the one where Paraguay might slip up a bit, but I don't see them losing. I say, yeah, I probably fancy a 2-2 draw in this one. I think even if it's the worst result that they can probably think of, I think it's still the one that allows them to be in contention to qualify. So I'll say 2-2 against Japan. What about you?
Well, I said it'd be like a 3-2 or 4-3. I'm gonna go with Paraguay win, and it'll be 3-2.
This team does not give up. That's the one thing I'm really looking forward to, that this team will, if Japan score early, I think they'll have the chance to bounce back from this and move forward, like you saw in a lot of these games. The Uruguay game was the big one. That's the one where they were down, I think it was like 3-1, and they came back to win 4-3 against Bielsa's Uruguay. So yeah, there's always that kind of understanding. Looking at the second game against Israel, I think this is the one where Paraguay finally strived to do well. I'm gonna say 1-0. 1-0 Paraguay against Israel.
Oh, so it's gonna be tighter. Okay. No,
I
I
just
think
have
I think Paraguay will win 2-0. I think they can take that game. So I've already got Paraguay qualified now. I'm on 6 points.
yeah, there you go. I'm on 4. I think they beat Mali. I think they also beat Mali. I think they win 2-1. 2-1 on this one. What about you? Do you think they all go 9 points?
Well, I think because if my theory plays out and they've won the first 2 games, I'll rest a few players for the Mali game, and then I think we'll get a 0-0 draw.
Okay. So that means you put them in first with Japan, I guess. Would that be the
Yeah.
one? Yeah, I think I'd do that as well. I think they're just right around there. So then, obviously, in the knockout stage, you're looking at the other group. You have Spain, Uzbekistan, Egypt, and Dominican Republic. I think Spain should qualify for the first stage. Sorry for as the group winners, but who goes in second? Who would play Paraguay in this case?
Yeah, and I mean, Ukraine got that 2-2 draw just now with Paraguay, but it was quite fortuitous. Uzbekistan have been quite good, I think. They've been winning some of their friendlies, so I don't know. Who should we throw in? Let's throw in Ukraine, and then we get like a rematch, right? Of
It's
the
not Ukraine, it's Uzbekistan.
Oh, Uzbekistan, sorry.
Uzbekistan, Egypt, Dominican Republic, not Ukraine.
Oh,
Sorry.
sorry. Let's throw in Uzbekistan, and then
Yeah, and then yeah, they obviously would play the game in Lyon. And if they were to win that game, then they would play the winner of Group B and the runner-up of Group A. And I think that's gonna be either Argentina against you got France, USA, Guinea, and New Zealand. I think you get a rematch with Argentina. That's a really big game, and I think that's the one where I don't know, Ralph. Can we really think of them winning some medal? I genuinely think they can go for the bronze. I think if they go for the bronze medal, I think that would be it would be a success in general because they don't. This is a team. Remember, this is a country that doesn't win sporting medals. Yes, for them it would suck because obviously they want to go for more, but I genuinely think they can make it to the semifinals. And then from there, whatever happens, happens. They know what it's like to play against Argentina. They've done it. I think there's always been those critics given to the likes of to Mascherano. I think there's always been those kind of things. So again, I think that game could be a toss-up, depending on how it goes. But I think for me, at a minimum, they're gonna get the bronze medal. That's my big prediction, you would say. I think they're gonna, as much as it pains me to say this, I don't think they beat Argentina. I think they lose that one, and then they play the bronze medal game. I have to check. It'd probably be like some other team. I don't have to look, but I think, yeah, I'll say it
yeah,
right. I say they win the bronze medal, which would be a big thing for Paraguay. As much as they don't want to win, as much as for Jara Salier, who obviously wanted to win the gold, but that's a big achievement for Paraguay if they go for the bronze.
yeah. I
Honestly,
think I think any medal is a huge achievement for this team, and obviously with tournament football, once you get into those later stages, there's so many kind of small margins that can make a big difference. With I'd love to see them play Argentina because they lost the two friendlies since the tournament where they did beat them. They lost the two friendlies and they looked very poor, Paraguay, in those two friendlies. And it seemed as if Argentina has been getting better and Paraguay hadn't. But of course, that team was very different to the team we're going to see now,
mhm.
especially with Julio Encisa and Diego Gomez.
Same
Neither
for
of
Argentina. Same for Argentina as well.
same as Argentina that have made some big changes as well, right? With bringing in some big players. But I would love to see that kind of rematch and see where they're at. And I always do feel that Harasagia has kind of a bit of it gets a bit of the better of Mascherano in the big games, when they did face that match before. So it'd be nice to see. But yeah, I really think Paraguay have a great chance of medaling. But like I say, it comes into knockout games, it becomes so tight, these small margins and crazy moments. But they're decided by big players, and I think Paraguay have those big players in Julio Encisa and Diego Gomez.
Just a reminder, by the way, for the knockout stage, it's not going to be like what we've been seeing in CONMEBOL, where you go straight to penalties if it's a tie. So it will go to extra time as well. So that could be a case of where these players have the energy as well. But I guess I'll put you on the record. Where do you see Paraguay finishing? I say bronze medal.
Yeah, I think they make the semifinals. So I
Like
think
if
they're
you have to give
gonna.
like a percentage, I guess you would say like a percentage of the bronze medal if you have to put yourself out there.
Yeah, no, I'll give them a bronze. I'll give them a bronze. I
Bronze.
think that. Yeah, I think that. I definitely think they can make the semifinals, and so from there, you have two chances at a medal.
Now let's go into dream world for a bit because I think that's always the big scenario. What would well let's go for the three reactions. What would a bronze medal mean for Paraguay if they were to get it? Like what would that mean, I guess, for Jara Salier and for the team? Like what would it mean to win a second Olympic medal, but it's the bronze? Let's just
Oh,
start with that.
I think it'll be a huge achievement. I think nobody can underestimate what kind of the France and Spain teams are, and getting a bronze bit. Maybe if it ends up being behind those two teams or similar, there's kind of no shame in that. I think everybody would be proud of this team if they managed to get that medal.
Let's just start with the bronze. What if they go to the final and there is always that dream of them going for the for the big one, but it's a second straight silver medal.
Yeah, but I still think it'll be huge. It'll be huge. I mean, obviously it will depend on the way the final plays out and how
Like
close it
imagine if
was.
they play France. Imagine that they play France and but they lose to the host.
Yeah, but it'd still be a huge achievement for to get that silver medal, and I think it would kind of just cement more the legend of Haras Aguirre as well, right? Going back to back finals in his two appearances. I don't know if anybody's done that, right? I'll have to check.
Um, Probably Argentina, or at least like yeah, it's been a while. I'm trying to think as well, and probably
But
the
with the same coach, yeah.
oh yeah, no, yeah, it's you have to go back. I mean, this is a tournament that's played since what the 1900s something,
Yeah.
Ralph, the first one, so you have to go way back. But if they win the gold, how big of a sporting achievement would that be? And I think we've had this debate as well. Like for you on a personal level, if they were to return with the gold medal, even if it's a U23 team, even if it's all that, how big of a sporting achievement would it be compared to the two Copa Americas, the Libertadores wins from Olympia, the world titles, etc.? Where would that rank if they were to get the gold medal?
Yeah, I mean, it's right up there. I think, yeah, I mean, it's an argument whether it's bigger than a Copa America or not. It's obviously going to be bigger than a Copa America in 1979. So because of collective memory and recency bias, it would be huge. And then yeah, you put it up there with the Olympia. I think it's very similar to the Olympia winning the Libertadores when they first won it, when Paraguay really was not expected to be able to compete because a Paraguayan team had never done that before. And it's the same, right? Paraguay's never won a gold medal before, so it would be right up there. It'd be huge. I mean, you're gonna see parades in the street. People are going to work the next day. I mean, there'll be a lot of partying if that was to happen.
Yeah, but I think people will be very happy if they get any medal. I mean, yeah, if we wanted to be very, very picky and say, oh, it's a bronze, like, I mean, maybe it's just maybe the American at me of thinking like we want to strive for the gold, all that kind of stuff. But then you have to realize how many medals have they won in their history? Getting something is big.
Yeah. I'm sure that any medal will be well received in Paraguay. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, I'll be going to France, so I'll be traveling there on Monday. So I'll be there in Bordeaux on Tuesday. So obviously, we'll have a lot of content going in there, like we did for the Copa America with myself and Ralph. You'll get all the coverage there. Obviously, let's see. I hope there's a lot of Paraguayans. I'm really excited. I'm really looking forward to see how many Paraguayans make it up to France for this one. So obviously keep an eye on that. I'll be at the three group stage games. Hopefully it doesn't end early, and hopefully that Paraguay can do one better than what we saw in the United States, and they can actually and then we can then when I come back to the States, we can watch it on TV, and hopefully they can go far. But I'm looking forward to it. It's the Olympics. Obviously, keep an eye as well of the other Paraguayan teams participating in other sports. Obviously, they'll be playing in, I think, swimming, rowing. I'm trying to think, beach volleyball for the first time. Imagine that, Ralph. A landlocked country playing in beach volleyball for the first
There
time.
you go. Yeah,
That's a
yeah. And we've always done well in beach football as well. So we got something to say for being landlocked. Yeah.
Let's see what we can do with our hands though, and not with our feet. So, obviously keep an eye on that. We'll get all the coverage out there, and yeah, thank you for everyone listening. Let's hope that by the time we come back, that we can be celebrating, hopefully, a big achievement from Paraguay getting a medal, and yeah, obviously keep an eye on what we're doing here on Guarani Vision as we close out another great episode for myself, Roberto Rojas, and Ralph Hanna. Thank you so much for listening in. See you soon.